So welcome to the show. Today it's my great pleasure to talk to Nathan Corbett. Nathan's an 11-time Muay Thai world champion, a Division III world Muay Thai champion on 3 occasions, and a 2-time winner of the 8-man K1 tournament. He's been honoured into the WBC MuayThai Hall of Fame, and his impressive fight record stands at 64 fights, 4 losses and 1 no contest. And within that 64 fights, 59 wins, and 44 by technical knockout. Nathan's retired now from fighting and is a sports commentator for Lion Fight. He's a motivational speaker and a life coach. He continues to train fighters from all around the world and is founder of the Carnage Elbow Striking System. So everyone, please help me welcome Nathan Carnage Corbett. Man, welcome, and it's fantastic to see you. You're looking great.
Yeah, thanks, David. It's good to see you as well. We keep catching up on all different continents, so it's nice.
Exactly. Well, we've both been based in the USA for several years now, and so what are you doing down there in California? I guess in COVID times it's a bit modified, but I saw you doing some impressive events with Lion Fight.
Yeah, so what I was doing before COVID, of course, was commentating on Lion Fight, which is the leading Muay Thai promotion in America. We're up to 63 events that have been running for 10 years, and I've done the last 13 shows since I moved here, which was aired on CBS Sports for all those shows, which was great. And then doing some seminars and training some fighters and stuff like that in between. But since COVID, I just sort of went back to more personal coaching, just, training clients, from anyone, really, anyone who wants to train. Just treading water, keeping things flowing until the world opens up again, so we can start to travel internationally, because I was doing international shows as well for broadcasting.
You were.
Which is great. And so next year, hopefully, will be another really good year of international travel.
Yeah. So tell us, just diving back into the start of you back in Australia as a young kid. Australians play lots of sports. So, and typically, there's sports like football, different football codes, soccer, there's cricket, there's tennis, there's, a whole bunch of things. But was your upbringing normal in the respective sports? Because, you're a big guy, very muscular, and I know you've worked on that to build that body, but what was your background in sports?
Yeah, I started with soccer when I was like 7, 8, 9. I think then I changed over to AFL.
Yeah.
Did you? I played AFL for Surface Demons.
Right.
Like 10, I think like 10, 11, 12, something like that.
Yeah.
I also did surf lifesaving. So I was like, North Surf Club. So I was doing that as well. And then they're the only real sort of base sports that I did. And then I found karate, and when I was 14 and jumped into that, and I was surfing as well. I surfed a lot. I was a big surfer with long hair and everything. So I surfed pretty hard for like 10 years.
Yeah. And
then I found Muay Thai. So my loves through my teenage years was like surfing, karate and Thai boxing.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. And back in those days, how big was the Muay Thai scene in Australia?
It was pretty big, like that's what I guess encouraged me to get more into it, because there was a lot of talent, a lot of fighters that were at such a high level that had been living in Thailand and traveling back to Australia. And there was some big promotions that were bringing, the best Thais that were fighting in Thailand stadiums. They were bringing them over to like Thailand versus Australia back in like 95 and 96.
Oh, wow.
When I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
I was just more like just sort of touching my toe in Muay Thai at that time. And I went to a few of these events, and then I started in 2000, my full career. And then I went pro 2001, and it was that really from 2000 to 2010, 12, it was kind of the golden era of Muay Thai in Australia. Like now it's not as big, or it wasn't as big. And that was just like the time when it was on Fox Sports. It was on, main TV. It was just all over the place. A lot of high skilled, talented fighters, good promotions. It was a good time.
Yeah. So you're very well known, aren't you, in Australia, but also other parts of the world in the Muay Thai community?
Yeah, I was lucky enough and blessed enough to cause enough carnage through my fight career that the ricochets and that went global, and people heard about me. And I obviously fought around the world and had a lot of, fights in Australia where, we'd fly international opponents into us.
Right.
So I got this global name, which was really awesome to be able to, especially when I finished fighting. I retired actually, and I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So then I started doing these seminar tours through Europe. And it was like, when I went over there, it was amazing to go to like country like Serbia and have like 80 people in a hall. And you're like, I just never even imagined when I was fighting that there would be Serbians that know who I am, or Croatians, or Slovakia, or Slovenia, or in Germany and Vienna, and all these different countries that I went to. It was just like, and they were like, really excited to see me and meet me and stuff. So it was kind of like a interesting kind of like almost like a farewell, like thanking all my fans tour towards at the end of my fighting career for like a couple of years. It went really strong for like 3 years where I went back to Europe, and I've done like about 140 seminars over the 6 years since I retired, and I've been to about 18 different countries, and I've been to Europe like 6 different times. When I was even living in Australia back and forth. So
well, I remember that time. You'd be jetting backwards and forwards, and we'd see each other when you came back.
That's right.
And I mentioned that just off camera, I'm in Istanbul, and I was having lunch with a friend of a friend just yesterday, and we got talking about this interview, and he said, I've got a friend who's a Muay Thai boxer. And I said, Nathan fought here in Istanbul in one of the Glory events. And he said, so did my friend. And so, it's just amazing. And so my friend's texting his mate. Do you know Nathan Corbett? Of course I do. He's one of the greatest of all time. And so, you're probably even broader known than what you've seen through people attending the seminars.
Yeah, no, you're right. And super cool because, like, these days everything's about social media. It's all about Instagram. It's all about this kind of like YouTubers, which, I kind of like, I'm not really about it. I mean, it's just like, it's kind of in some ways for me, it's disgusting that these people are idolized and they're famous on YouTube for just being like brats, or just being show offs or being idiots or just being these comedians. But it's like, they're super famous. That's just the way the world is now.
Yeah.
But I was super, like proud that from 2000 to 2010 there was not even social media. Like I think I went on Facebook for the first time in 2011. So those 10 years when I was like dominating the world knew who I was. Before it was like, oh, look at me filming my training session, look at me what I'm eating, and all of a sudden people getting famous just through follows. I got famous through just doing the work, like just fighting, fighting and winning fights and beating people, knocking people out. So I think that's for me, when I look back now and I look to where I am now, I feel like that's what keeps my name in that legendary, like constant, never really forget who that person is. Like obviously, young people coming through might not know unless their trainers educate them.
Yeah.
But I feel like that kind of like time gave me that solid, true growth and true expansion of people knowing who I am versus like, it's just a quick flick on the phone, like, oh yeah, whatever, It's like it's ingrained in the history. When now social media, nothing's ingrained because it's like swipe, bam, gone.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So your fight record, just incredible. 64 fights, but 59 wins and 44 knockouts. I saw one of your interviews where it seemed that your objective every fight was to knock the fighter out.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I did have 64 fights, and it is actually 60 wins because the one loss that they talk about, I think what they're referring to is a no contest fight.
I see.
Because I was in Japan and I grabbed the guy's kick. He kicked me and I grabbed his leg, and as I went to like sweep him to kick, he fell over and I kicked him in the head when he hit the ground. It was like a real quick like reaction. I was like, the kick was a little bit late, but at the time I thought it wasn't.
Yeah.
And I got disqualified, so I think that's what they call a loss. But I put it down as a knockout because he couldn't continue the fight. But exactly that. That's the mentality that I had. Like growing up, I started in karate, which was this martial art that was formed around like proper war. Like when you think about karate, it was designed. People say it's designed for self-defense. Yeah, it is designed for self-defense. Just designed back then to, protect and to obviously, finish someone. So I learned these kind of like mentality through karate. Then I went into my Thai boxing career. So I never really looked at I never really looked at it as a sport. I never really looked at, a point system. Like I couldn't even judge a fight, the score of a fight, even after all my experience, because I wouldn't know what they score. Because I never had a mindset, if I do this many kicks this round, I've won the round. Or if I run away and I just tag him and move away, I've won the round. Like I never fought for strategy. My strategy was never, just get him into the 5th round and maybe you'll beat him, or maybe just hit and move and wear him out. It's like, no, bang, hit the bell rings. I'm like, I'm coming after you.
Yeah.
And of course I'd have to sometimes move backwards because, I was smarter than just keeping going forward. But my objective from the bell was to finish my opponent.
Yeah.
As quick as possible, as smooth as possible. And that's how my style become, like I said, with the 64 fights, 60 wins. And then I think it's around, like you said, the 42 something knockouts. That doesn't just come from luck, it comes from that place of mindset, because obviously everyone trains the same. I wasn't doing anything, some secret training that no one else was doing. There was actually people training more than me or learning more than I was learning, because I was limited to my knowledge pool where I was based in the world. So it really comes back to a mindset.
Well, and how do you maintain for 10 or 11 active years of fighting professionally? How do you maintain that focus? Because that's an extraordinary load to be able to be a world champion in all these different categories and keep those belts.
Yeah, absolutely. So David, I had the more I think about my career, I've spoken about my career over the last few years, and I look back on it and I sort of dissect the sections of where I'm at, your purpose. My first purpose when I started martial arts at 14 was, I want to be strong. To be a man, you need to be strong. You need to be able to protect. You need to eradicate fear. And these are things that I wanted to do. So I took on karate and started training to try and strengthen the things I didn't have within me, or the things that were soft within me, and all the things I thought I needed on the outside or on the inside. So my first purpose and objective was that. And then as I was going through that journey, and I was sort of finishing school, and I didn't have any desire for education. I didn't have any desire for to be just a worker or a builder or anything like that. So I still had this deep burning desire inside of me to keep filling up that cup of what I spoke about. Then I just left school, was teaching karate, was still involved with martial arts. But then when I started my fighting career in 2000, my Muay Thai career, where I sort of stopped karate completely and just went into one modality, my next purpose and objective wasn't so much that I want to be that person anymore. My next objective was, I don't want to be average. I don't want to be normal. I want to do things in life that exceed an average life.
Yeah.
As I started my fight career, of course, I didn't think I was going to be a world champion, because I just wasn't sure. I had some self-doubts, whatever, but through those self-doubts, I kept turning up to training, kept taking the fights, and through that, as a process, obviously I got to a different level and I got the world title. So when I won my first world title, I'm like, wow, I'm here now, So now I'm like, well, now I'm never letting this belt go. So then I fought for 10 more world titles, but for me, I've spoke about it, that first world title was the only belt I ever won. The other ones I just defended. I just defended the right to keep that one.
Yeah.
Even though I fought in 3 different weight divisions, and went upper weight, and won belts in different weight divisions. I just always looked at it as I'm not prepared to walk in tonight as a champion and leave as a former champion. Because to me that was losing the whole message of how I wanted to live, great, not average. So I just had that mindset of just there's no way. And of course, that with having that mindset, it created a lot of pressure, because you keep winning, eventually if you do lose, it's a long way to fall. But I think that's what separates, some fighters and champions. That's that separation gap, that they can handle the pressure of the expectations and still perform.
So as still a relatively young guy when your fighting career started, the discipline to keep doing that work build that mentality, but also just continue to show up, get stronger, better, and brush up and refine your skill set. How was that? Was that easy for you once you were in that zone, or did you find that you were tempted to go and do what every other 20-year-old guys in their early 20s were, and around that age are off doing, particularly on the Gold Coast where you got surf and you got all sorts of distractions everywhere?
No, I really didn't find it a struggle at all. I feel like I just sunk right into that calling, and like I just felt like I wanted it so much that I just knew what it took. So it just never was distracted. Like I said, because and I always talk about it because it's the why. If your why is strong enough, then those other things that come in, they don't really kind of pull you off track. Like some people don't really know, oh yeah, I just want to be a fighter to be cool. I just want to be a fighter to make money. I just want to be a fighter because I've got anger issues. Like I never had anger issues. It was like I just wanted to be great. I wanted to have a life where I could say to myself that I achieved high levels of thing, and I'm still trying to do that as well in my career now. Yeah. So my why was so big. Like the beginning why was like, okay, I need to be strong. I need to be able to defend my family. I need to be able to defend myself. And even if it's coming from a place of fear, it was still fed by a stronger why. So even though the greatness now I look back was coming from a place of fear, because I'm like, if I don't make to the greatness, how am I going to survive? Like my parents have no money. I don't have an education. What am I going to do? I need to fight. I need to win, because no one's paying losers to fight. They're paying winners. Let's just be real in the world. No one pays for losers. They pay for winners. So I just was like, okay, I've got to do this. This is it. And obviously I loved it. So it wasn't like I was doing something I hated, but yet needed to do that because it was the only thing that I thought I could do. No, I loved it. But at the same time, that why was so strong. So it never really pulled me off track because of that reason. Like I knew I could focus. Of course, I had my days where I was tired, didn't want to go to training, but I never had that like distractions of like, whatever, alcohol, drugs, partying, whatever, go. I mean, surfing, whatever, you can still do that as a hobby, but I never really had that thing that was pulling me away from my why. Even when my son was born, when I was 22, I said to the girl, I said, look, I didn't really want to have a child, but now I have one. I said, well, I'm not stopping my career. Like, that's it. Like, I'll be a dad, but I'm not stopping my career. So I never let anything sort of push me off my track. I was just like, that's it. And it wasn't, and it was never coming from a place of being selfish. It was just that this is my job. This is what I'm doing.
It's inspiring. It's always inspiring to me to find someone who's got that real clarity at a young age, because it really sets you up for good practices and going ahead for success in whatever you're, focusing on, doesn't it? It's years with that focus repeated every day.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's been a journey after fighting to try and like find that same, like that same food to chew on. Right. It was like the same feeling that I had for that. Like, okay, well, give me the exact same, give me the thing I needed to just start, chewing on, and then I'm going to just chew straight through the whole bone, Yeah.
Right. And do you feel that you've got that in your post-fighting life? You've got that why is developed, or is it developing?
It's developing. I'm sure, because I spent so many years just like completely lost, and so many years lost in the whole ego around wanting to still be the fighter, but couldn't physically be the fighter. Then who am I, and identity, and all these things. So it's been a real like challenging like new fight to just sort of come up with a whole new long-term goal and a long-term plan. So it's sort of like I feel like it's every year. I'm getting closer to that destination, and it's getting a lot more clear to me, because I had to first get rid of a lot of ego, and I had to first get rid of a lot of like, in some ways anger that I couldn't still fight, and a lot of like pain and suffering from losing what you call your identity, or you're losing your career, and you're losing so many things. So it took a few years of just grieving and suffering and the pain of that. And some days it's still there, because I think that fighting that comes inside of you, and then you're used to that, that I guess not even adrenaline, but that kind of such a high level of purpose. Like it's so like it's hard to explain unless you've been there as a fighter with your 5,000 people screaming and you're in the stadium. It's just like it's such a and heightened awareness and definition of like clarity. So it's kind of hard to match.
Yeah, well, I've heard all sorts of sportsmen talk about that period soon after because you're getting so much recognition, you're getting so much love for what you do,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden that finishes, and if at that point maybe there's got to be a re-establishment of, well, who am I really? Was it just me, the fighter, and there's nothing left, or is it? It's about, and it seems like you're getting on with that part of your life for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and exactly that. When you think about and you say that to yourself at 35, like, okay, now like, was that it? Like at 35, like I've got another 50 years here. I'm like, well, that's it. Like 35, that's it. That was my life done. Now I just got to just friggin' fade out to the end of it. It's like it's got to like come back and then just have another massive rise. But I feel like there's no way. There's no there's no kind of right or wrong way, I think, to get back to that place. And I had to realize that it just takes time. And someone said you need to do it in a year, you need to get your shit together, and some people, whatever. It's just like, I don't think there's any real particular time frame that it takes one person or it takes another person to find their new path or multiple paths. Because now I'm realizing that before it was one path, before it was, I'm the fighter and I fight and that's it.
Yeah.
Now I'm realizing, okay, well, within the same kind of language that I speak, there's kind of like multiple things that I can do. It sort of sits under the same umbrella, but yet it's not just that one clear thing. Which was just get up, train, and then fight and so forth. So
do you find, in that respect, do you think you're as sharp mentally, and in terms of the strength of your own mind, is that as sharp as you were when you were fighting, or is it sharper?
I feel like my mind has become more sharper in understanding of things, but I haven't fully. Even when I look back at some of my, it's really crazy because I look back at some of my old interviews, like from years ago, when I was already ahead of all the other fighters when they would speak.
Yeah.
And then I look now and I'm thinking, oh man, that's how I was thinking, that's how I was acting, that's how I was. I'm like, whoa, like I've completely changed even more since then. Even when I've looked at myself a year ago on some of my Instagram, on Facebook, like talks, just 1 year later, I'm like, the development is just like so much, like so superior to than what it was before, and so much further down the path. So it's a journey. It's a journey, but it's really I haven't quite nailed it just yet. Where I feel like, okay, boom, like I'm just like locked in, like Top Gun when they fight a jet locks in on the target, boom. I haven't quite fully done that yet, but I feel like the other side of me that's learning is that it's okay not to have that yet, because that was what was causing me a lot of pain, was to not know, versus like kind of like enjoying the process or just figuring out, because that's obviously where all the growth is.
Yeah.
And so many businessmen have told me, that's all right, I've failed 6 times and been on my knees 6 times. It's okay. I'm like, oh, okay.
Do you because you've got an entrepreneurial spirit, haven't you? You're not looking for a job, anyone to look after you. You've created various things, and that's sometimes that knowing that there's this landscape ahead of you, which is as wide as you can possibly imagine, without any. Well, here's your job, and this is the job description, and you work from these hours, and you get paid this much. You've got this landscape, just like I have, and every entrepreneur. And you say, well, gee, sometimes it takes a while to work out exactly where do I want to focus on everything that's potentially ahead of me.
Yeah, I mean, that word entrepreneur, like I was like, okay, I always believed I was an entrepreneur, but then obviously in the last few years, I'm like, well, I'm not really that much of an entrepreneur, because I'm like, I don't know how to use a computer. I'm not really good at business strategies. I haven't done business before and all these kind of things. And then I realized, well, hold on a second. They're just like skills you haven't, focused on to learn. But I have not once in my whole life, even when I was like 20 years old, been employed by someone.
Wow.
I'm 41 next Friday.
Gee.
And I have not once had a job. Now, when I work for Lion Fight and I'm commentating, you could say I'm employed by them, but I'm actually self-contracted. Yeah. And I don't really look like it as they employ me, because they don't pay me if I'm not stepping on the stage working for them anyway and calling a fight on TV, not even on a salary.
Yeah.
So then I was like, man, actually I've survived since I was, 18 or 20, whatever number you want to call it. I've survived in the world with no job.
Yeah.
As such, like, a 9 to 5, like you said. So it kind of gives me that idea that, well, okay, you are an entrepreneur. Just because you don't have, $10 million in the bank right now doesn't mean that you're not an entrepreneur, because
Sure.
you've managed to weave your way through life and be successful and go to the highest levels and move countries and do this and get this job. I mean, I didn't even have a degree in talking on TV, and I just said, yes, I can do it. And all of a sudden I'm on. I'm just doing it. I'm just on the flow in the moment, just learning the skills on the job, asking them, what's that? As we're on TV. Okay. Just getting it done. So
you got all the skills.
I feel like I am an entrepreneur, but I have so much to learn. And I just realized a couple of days ago when I was in Vegas with a client of mine, and I was like, man, I spent from 20 to 35, not naive, because I was still, open to the world. But I spent those 15 years and also the 5 years before that, if you think about it, when I was a teenager, because I didn't really care about school. So I spent 20 years in one development and one focus. So then all of a sudden I'm 35, and what everyone else did at 20 to 35, I'm now having to do from 35 to 50. But the only difference is I don't have till 50 to do it. I've got to get there faster. So I've really got from 35 to 45 to nail it, and then kick ass again in the whole, sense of, abundance and money and business and whatnot. I'm like, oh, here I am being landed at 35 years old, into a foreign country, meaning just like any country, and I can't speak the language yet. Yeah. Which the language is business, the language is, this. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. We've got to work it all out. Yeah. So it's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. You got the confidence to do that. Hey, I wanted to talk about some of the strategies and thinking mentality around when you would approach fights and opponents. Is that okay? We can do that?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah. So when you were had a particular opponent that you were coming up against, because you did 60 fights, 60 fights in, was it 60, 64 fights in 10 years, 11 years?
No, it was over like the 15-year period. Okay. 14 years.
Righto. But you were having a fight on average every sort of 3 to 4 months, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, in the beginning, I had like more fights. And then towards the end, it was like 3 fights a year. Okay. But in the beginning, I had like, 4, 5. One year I had like a really good year. Like 2004, I had like 7 fights. That was a good year. Yeah.
So that would give you time to prepare for some opponents longer than others. But how would you go about, would your training modified, or were you just turning up as you with all your skills and the areas that you were strong in? Your elbow technique was legendary and has continued to be something you're really well known for. And you just played your game, or did you modify your thought process depending on the strengths of your opponent?
You know what? Like, I never really modified anything based on my opponent. I had my interpretation and how I would interpret how I wanted to express myself. Yeah. Uh-huh. But I would only look at them to say, okay, what stance has he got? So I know when I get in there, I'm not going to be like surprised that he's actually a righty versus a lefty. Mm-hmm. I know, and I look for like some certain points. Okay, like if you're like there's bullet point factors. Like, okay, he's got a big right leg kick. Okay, so you got to make sure that subconsciously and consciously, your brain has already got that leg check block done. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you're going to be surprised. Oh, bang! There's the kick. It's like, no, I already knew that was coming because I already seen that. Mm-hmm. Or he had like a head kick, or he had a heavy overhand right, or he had just whatever, man. Or he was like a distance fighter, or he was an awkward fighter, or he was more like a stamina, like long distance kind of fighter and would run away. So I'd take on those. I'd look for those assets or those skill sets that they had. And it was just more like, okay, it's in there. Now forget about it. Now just go and fight. Because in my fight career, and when I look back, it's like 90% of my time I was fighting, I was attacking, putting them in a 90% of their time reactive, defensive state. Yeah. It's almost like they didn't even realize that in some way, because I was attacking all the time, that I was almost hypnotizing them into a state where they would always have to be defensive or thinking what's going to come next. But while they're thinking and while they're being defensive, they're not doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, and so I was always pressing with intelligence, not just brawling with intelligence, but I was always pressing, and just that just sort of created that kind of intensity that I would just figure out what I was going to do within the moment. It wasn't like, okay, let's do this combination, let's work on that combination. It was more like, okay, this guy's got this. Okay, all right, I've got it. Okay, put it in the subconscious, done. Let's fight. Bell ring, boom, and I just go for it. Look for it, boom, there's an opening, boom, 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 there's an opening, boom, 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 there's an opening. Okay, he attacks me, and I just react to his attack.
Yeah.
And just keep going forward. So I never really strategize like they do these days. It's very interesting when I've been training fighters and their previous coaches has this list of strategy.
Right.
Like he's going to move like this, going to do this, we're going to do this, he's going to move like that, we're going to do that. I remember one time I was training this one female fighter, and then her boyfriend sent me this like list of like an essay list of the breakdown of her opponent and the breakdown of what she was going to do. And I was just like, whoa, what is this? Have I been doing it wrong my whole life, or is this how it's supposed to be? Like, you know, I've never seen this before. This is insane. So, you know, she lost the fight anyway. It's like,
yeah,
because I'm telling you right now, like, strategy is really important to a degree, but the fights that I lost, and I've spoke about this before, the fights that I lost in the end of my career were lost before I stepped into the ring.
Oh, really? You see it that clearly?
Yeah. Tyrone Spong, I lost to before I even stepped in there for the second fight.
Right.
Gokhan Saki, not necessarily because my ear got ripped open, but I kind of still had a little bit of that same feeling on my spirit before I walked in there.
That's in because I watched that fight. I watched the replay of the Saki fight, and it looked like you were well and truly dominating him. You know,
the thing is, yeah, once the bell rang, once he went and did a flurry on me and he started to try and kill me, and then I found his rhythm, my brain then switched into that gear and went, okay, I've worked you out now.
Right.
I know what you got, and I'm going to beat you. And then I was just like, wow, I'm coming in for those chops. And he just went for that lucky launching kick, hook that grabbed the ear and ripped it, which has never happened in Muay Thai history ever, because the eardrum wasn't broken. It was actually a tear from it folding the eardrum backwards. And I lost. So, but I know for a fact that those fights that I lost in respect to who they were and how strong they were, I kind of wasn't in that state of like, okay, you can be afraid, but you just like, you know, I'm going for it.
Yeah.
So strategy is really important to a degree, but in my opinion, and that's why it's probably never going to be like, not that it matters, but there'll never be another Carnage that fights like the way that I do. Because it's not really a technique or a strategy or a fitness regime or a strength regime. It's really just it's a mindset. It's a concept of how you want to express yourself in the ring.